Hey, Soul Family. I am Shannon Pardini, and I am here with a new podcast series. It's called the Unity Code Podcast Series. And to kick it off, I'm here with my co-creator, Diana, who's we're really doing something different. I don't have any videos on my YouTube channel about who I am, what I do, what my expertise is. You guys have listened to some of the content, and it kind of goes back a couple years, and I'm ready to just kind of show and tell who I am today, what I'm doing, what I'm working on personally with people and transforming their lives. And it's perfect to have Diana here to give me reflection and to help me answer the complicated questions or the easy questions that most of you may be interested in knowing. Do you want to share a little bit of who you are and your background?
Yes. So thank you, Shannon, for allowing me to be on your podcast because this has been in the works for months now. We're thinking about how to amplify your message to reach more people to learn from you. I think we're ready as a human species to do so. And this is a great new beginning of introducing you, how you got here, all the wonderful things you're working on. And just so the listeners know, that I am her student for months now, and I have seen a personal transformation in my vibration, and vibration is my reality. So to see like a shift, even subtle shifts, it makes a clear difference on what I'm attracting into my life. And Shannon is here to just assist me and the group because we have group classes and there's like a group of us that has been continually learning from her over the months. And I'm just so grateful to have been able to attract her in my life, and hopefully I can be a benefit in her life and help her be the amplifier so I can help her spread this message even further and reach more people. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. There are many podcasts to listen to right now, and for you to be here with us, wow, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. And, again, this podcast here is, for really all of you to attune, get the information and resources that you need as we are advancing what it is to be human potential here. And so let's just kind of kick off. A little bit about me is I have been a healer. I call myself a quantum energy healer or pioneer and leader in DNA intelligence. And what that consists of right now is for years, I've been teaching courses on beginning DNA and advanced DNA and how one can learn how to start using the software system of their physical body. So the DNA within the human vessel is your software system. If you just think about a quantum computer or a computer, again, your DNA is always coding, whatever is in your perspective and field, and it's allowing you to have these expanded states or less than expanded states in your daily lives. And so for me, it's very important to start teaching people what this anatomy within the physical body can be because it is very intelligent and advanced. And that is just partial of what I do. I also work with my clients in personal sessions where I can go in, whether it's through meditative states of theta and hypnosis, where I can go in and recode the DNA, where I can go in and problem solve what is the root of disease or what is the root of any type of discordance within your life. It doesn't have to just be within the physical body. It can be what you are currently co-creating in your lives in the external environment, and you're having certain looping cycles of situations that just don't serve you, and there's so much more for you. And other things that I do, what else do I do?
Well,
I'll
I
let
just
you chime in.
I cannot recommend enough a personal session with Shannon. If you have never had one, I mean, I think that's where the largest shift for me was happening through like the hypnotherapy session and also retracing like 3 generations back is if you are not living the type of lifestyle that you desire in your heart and you know, like me, it could be so much better and why isn't it? I mean, Shannon can help you through that process like she helped me and clear up all that junk, from our ancestors. It's like remarkable how she's doing things that I've never ever came across another spiritual healer or spiritual teacher to do it in the way that she has. So there are lots of different modalities out there. There are many different teachers, but Shannon's work is truly special. And I just want her to kind of explain a little bit how this gift came about because I know you're probably listening like, wow, that's great. You could do all this stuff and I should book a private session with her. But how did you even develop such a skill?
So, how did I develop my gifts? Really, again, it's been a journey. It's been a journey of being a way shower, and just trusting the path. I always knew that there was something more to what this human existence is. I think a lot of us have that same calling. And for me, it was just really being true to myself. I always walked the path that many didn't want to take. And from being an entrepreneur to you know, again, just kind of coordinating my life with trajectories that really took me through hurdles to challenge. Again, at a very young age, I was working in the stock market at age 19. From there, I went into medical, and I never had a degree in anything. It's just that I kept transforming and transcending in these different companies and working my way up. And at the same time, I always had an innate sense within energy medicine too. So as I was working these very, very logical left brain, companies, but also seeing what was going on in the background, there was this profound push to keep doing the energy medicines and so forth. And so when I was working in the medical industry, I was also doing very long form yoga training, very advanced trainings, and then also was getting attuned to Reiki and just putting that to use. I would practice everything on my own, whether it be doing remote healings or working on my body. And I was getting a profound understanding and sense of how the energy body was working with me and how intelligent it was. And so moving forward, I've had the chance to work with very masterful healers in their craft and spend time within their passions and gifts and attuning myself as well. So it's just been a long history of really, like I said, just walking a path that was so very different. And I spent many years running a film studio of my own and being able to interview people from all around the world and also just get to dabble in energy medicine and document that as well. So there's so many years. It's like over 20 plus years here of understanding, really dedicating myself to energy medicine, working in the biohacking community, really going in depth with understanding neurofeedback and working with scalar fields and waves. And so that's kind of what I'll put out there for now. I have a long history in, so many business related, whether it's the left brain, but on the other side of it, throughout that weave was always just staying present to who I truly was, and it was mastering this physical body and the intelligence that it has within.
So, how did you actually because you are a specialist in like quantum and DNA work. Like, how did that come about? Like, I'm just really curious, and because that is your skill right now, and I'm sure that you have many others, like you said, your experience with, intense yoga and Reiki, but like, how did this come about with working specifically through the quantum and DNA work that you do?
Yeah, good question. Well, the DNA is the software system at the end of the day. And so it's the software system of our physical body. And with all those modalities that I was learning, there always is that software system that is communicating through the body. And so it's just something that evolved over time. No matter what I was working with in the energy and healer world, it was always around DNA. The conversation was always around DNA. And so as I kept studying and continuing what I was doing, whether it was being, Reiki or neurofeedback, I was working with all types of clients that had really chronic disease, and just watching again how we could resolve their situation through energy medicine and working with the neurofeedback. So everything keeps going back to DNA. Even with the neurofeedback, right? It's like we're repatterning, their brain. We're quieting the central nervous system. Well, all that is, encoding DNA and shifting it and transforming a person. And again, it's just every stage of the game of me transforming in these different teachings, it was just a higher understanding of the evolution of what DNA is and how this software system is working so intricately in the body and how it's producing different fields of information. So again, just to answer your question, is it's really just been a work in progress, and it's been a work in progress of me tuning out what we think this body is and allowing myself to just really sit with the physical body and others and watch what the anatomy is actually doing. It's not only is the DNA the software system, but a lot of the anatomy within this physical body is living intelligence and ascended. And so I've been able to put the pieces together through the years.
So, for those of us that have heard this for the very first time, like our body's a software system, and we're like, okay, is this like the movie The Matrix? Can you can you explain a little bit further on, is it coded like we have, like some people believe in God or whatever they like to call it, and then is it like a computer software system when you say software system? Like describe it a little bit more so people can relate to what that actually means.
So yeah, the physical body is very much like a quantum computer system or a computer system. The DNA is your software system, which is like the hard drive, the filing system that you have. And whatever you're entering into that computer apps you're running is the exact output that you're going to get in your everyday timeline, or the exact output that you're going to get in the products, or what you're co-creating with. Well, the body's the same thing. Again, this body, with the DNA as the software system, is always observing and taking in information of what we're identifying with outside of ourselves. And it's coding. And not only that, it's the body holds information. As far as I can trace it, about 3 generations back, but the body retains in that filing system information not only from yourself, but it also retains information from the bloodline. And so there's a lot of looping information within these physical bodies that feel really discordant, right? Just like our computer, when our computer has all these files or corrupted files or viruses, it feels very discordant, right? But there's more to it. It's within the physical body itself being a quantum computing system. Well, there's also, well, why is it this quantum computing system? It's the way that we're interpreting information within our matrix bodies. So, there's our computing system of the physical body, but then there's also an algorithm that we're all co-creating in of the three-dimensional physical body or the external. And a lot of that is from the limited beliefs, from the emotions, and the chemicals that the body's co-creating in. So going back to the quantum computer, well, what's in that filing system? Well, it's exactly that. The filing system within these physical bodies is holding a lot of the same recycled information that we are having mind thoughts of, that we're observing, that we're thinking of ourselves. And that we're forming conclusions of. We form a lot of conclusions of what we think we are, and that all gets downloaded and filed into the body. And then that body, again, is a direct representative of what you've been encoding it with DNA.
But how then are we coding it if it's like three generations back when we had no choice? Like, our parents and our grandparents and the great grandparents. Like, how is it that, like, I just feel like that's something that I struggled with my personal sessions with Shannon is like, well, I'm a sovereign being, Shannon. I don't care about my ancestors. Like, I feel bad that they struggled, but well, how does that affect me now in 2025, right? Like, I just, like my logical mind could not fathom the idea that they still have a hold on my lifestyle today. Like my reflection of my reality today is in my DNA. And so like I'm kind of struggling like when you say co-creating with the body, and I understand filing systems, yes, from the moment I was born to till today, many years later, like I have stored filing systems and different files away, and I'm coding everything. But how does that work when, your genetic line and you're kind of inheriting all of these codes into it? Like, I just feel like that's just really not fair. And also, when I mentioned earlier about God, so is he also coding the system, or is that just part of like some kind of like other algorithm that we've all agreed to?
So again, so with DNA and the matrix itself. So let me just explain. The matrix to me is really the limited beliefs, the emotions that come with it, and then the chemical sensations that sooner or later are going to create disease and form within the physical body. Right. And so that in itself is an algorithm that codes within the software system of the DNA. Going back to your question with the family bloodline, well, again, there's more to the story of this third dimensional reality is we're stuck in a reincarnation looping cycle. Number one, because we're only using 10% of the DNA, the software system. And so what we're doing in this human cycle is we're recreating old patterns, old limited beliefs. And within that, it's creating this reincarnation cycle. So when I'm tracing and trying to understand the human species is one, we already have that stored information in the DNA. There's already information from the reincarnation cycle. When we die, we just don't die and everything, that we've experienced goes away. It's when we reincarnate, again, there's still carryover from what this particular person is working on a very subconscious level. Because when I think about the human species, we are frequency, we're frequency electrical beings. And then we're currently in form because we're working with the DNA in a way where, like I said, it's only working at a 10% in a very inverted way where we're having these collective timelines of what we're seeing ourselves in form. But going back to how do we carry over frequency from the family bloodline and so forth is, well, it doesn't start there. You got carryover from reincarnation. And then again, with the family bloodline, like I said, right now I only need to trace it about 3 generations back. But when we're in the mother's womb, we're already getting attuned and coded in our DNA. So whatever our mother and even father is going through while we're in the womb stage, we're picking up and attuning all that information because the DNA is already coding again. So this living vehicle is always in a co-creative state and it's always taking in information at any time, but also it also holds subconscious information. And if we haven't worked on those certain limited behaviors, beliefs, right, within the bloodline, some of us think that we're so encoded to our genetics and stuff. Well, that's not true. Again, a lot of that information is very subconscious and it plays out, but at a certain point in time, at an advanced stage where humans can take more action in paying attention to how we are, creating and delivering, our authentic expression every day. So going back to getting attuned when, we're in the womb, well, you're not only getting attuned to the mother's information of, what she's experienced in that moment, you're also getting all the downloaded information of what your mom's experienced within her childhood, what her mother, grandmother, all of that information that hasn't been resolved, right? That is such a strong dominant frequency that's encoding in the bloodline, and that child is experiencing it in the womb because the mother is holding that subconscious frequency within her DNA. All that information gets passed down, it gets attuned, even on a daily basis. For example, like, let's move past how we get encoded on a three generations, or through genetics. Every day we're getting encoded, with, you and I sitting together, we're attuning to each other. And, whatever our belief system is, say, I'm having a bad day and I'm all upset about a breakup, or just having a really discordant relationship, and you're there feeling it with me, right? It's like you can totally feel it as if it's your own. Well, what that really means is you and I are holding similar codes, right? Of maybe betrayal or some type of manipulation or unrequited love. But at the same time, we're holding that space, we're attuning, right? The DNA is attuning to that. And that's just one example again. So the human is always attuning and coding to whatever we're observing, identifying with what we think we are. This DNA filing system's taking notes, whatever our thought forms are, right? And again, whatever has been replicated, multiple times within the family DNA that hasn't been resolved. So again, just like a filing system in a computer, right? When we're working on files and we're updating them, but we're saving the old copies, right? But that those no longer translate the same consciousness of where we are in the new document because it's been expanded and cleaned up. That's how a human is. Again, we're always coding, but and expanding. But if we don't clean up the most subconscious parts, right? Like even within our limited beliefs, if we don't go in and clean up the most subconscious, where we're constantly looping, we're catching ourselves, in these up and down feelings of discordance. We're seeing where we're creating this same type of chemical reaction, or in the environment, not creating what we truly want, whether it be relationship or health, or, whatever's going to move us forward. Those are the areas that are hyper subconscious, right? That can be really embedded deep in the subconscious of the family line that we don't even know that we have, right? So it is complex. And, I could go on for like a couple hours of how to trace different frequencies and how they code in DNA. But at the end of the day, there's only so many belief systems and limited patterns, but we're still seeing this matrix that's playing out in the 3D body of all humans. It's also playing out in the environment too. And there's only so many belief systems, right? But all they're doing is keeping us separate from what we truly are in an expanded state. And again, the human species is highly intelligent, but they're only using 10% of DNA capacity right now because they're using it inverted.
That's a lot to take in. I love listening to you explain these things, in varied different ways. Like when you show different examples, it's like I'm learning, I'm understanding, comprehending this information. And it's like, as you're speaking, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna ask her, what about watching a movie? Or if it's not, if it's virtual, like a virtual headset, like or something, is that still being filed away and being encoded? You know,
Ex
like from a simple standpoint of is everything, every interaction from you being a friend with somebody that's going through a breakthrough, or you're seeing somebody going through a painful experience, whether it's real life or on TV. Okay, let's dive into that because I'm really interested.
Yeah, so where you're speaking from is consciousness. So consciousness isn't just black or white, right? We're all, each and every one of us is in a different consciousness. If you think about the physical body, right, which I just kind of described with the DNA software system, if you think about your life and what you've attuned to and coded, again, it's there's so much different information in each and every one of us that again, we're holding consciousness in different spaces. And so with what you're saying is, are we always getting attuned by everything in our environment? Very much so if you're unconscious and subconscious. And again, unfortunately, most of humanity is because they're only using 10% of that DNA software system because what we're doing is we're humans like to over-identify in everything, right? And we like to say that it's true, and we like to form conclusions and create stories to hardwire why we're this, type of identity and DNA, and we're stuck to our genetics and blah 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 blah. But when we're doing that, we're keeping ourselves from expansion. When we're doing that, we're staying in very subconscious fields of what our true capacity is. Because within each and every one of us, there is an expanded state of innate genius, but through how we're observing and constantly identifying and trying to make it our own, right, by all the stories that we want to tell ourselves, that's what's keeping us in these very subconscious levels. So even going back to like TV shows and stuff, yeah, they're always if you're watching a TV show and it's triggering all types of chemical and emotion with you, or you're watching the show and you're like, oh, that feels like, my timeline and what I'm co-creating in my life. Well, again, there you're identifying in certain beliefs there. And those aren't true to you, but you can feel it within your body, these chemical sensations. And the body already knows that's not true to who you are. But the reason why we feel so close to it, again, is because we have those certain belief systems or limited beliefs. So when we're watching shows and we're definitely getting programmed, and sometimes some of our most subconscious feelings or discordant, they're showing up. The body's having this chemical reaction and it's saying, hey, this isn't who you are, but you're having this reaction to programming. Well, because it's you already have this programming within you. So it's a good time for us to really just take time to understand that that's not who you are. At the body's most expansive state, the body already knows what it is. The physical body knows wholeness. It knows the unified fields within it that we all have access to, and it really takes time to ascend the physical body to get to that innate frequency that's all knowing, that knows you, that it's a frequency that can completely restore, reheal, regenerate the whole physical body. But going back to all this different programming of, TV shows or being around people that make us feel less than, or connecting with others where we're connecting in kind of a discordant way because we have these limited beliefs, right, that we're connecting on. That stuff is just keeping us attuned to what's keeping us stuck, what's keeping us constantly creating these same cycles of what we're living out if we're not progressing, if we're not expanding. And then you said something about the headset. What's the headset?
Yeah, so Meta has released one. It used to, I think it was Oculus, but I think there's a new MetaMask or something like version. I don't have it obviously, but once it gets advanced enough and it's not heavy, I will pretty much put it on and go to Egypt and Greece and do like these tourist things on my VR headset and make it feel as if I am traveling and experiencing the world in my own living room, right? So that's how I plan on using, the virtual reality headsets. So that's what I mentioned. Like when it becomes so advanced, have you ever seen the movie Ready Player One?
I think I watched a little bit of it.
Okay, well, that's pretty much the future where everyone's like plugged into their VR headsets and they are interacting with each other in these virtual worlds, right? Because when you look at reality and with all these jobs being automated and being replaced by robotics, et cetera, I look at the human and I'm like, what are you going to do now when there aren't any jobs, right? Like, and so they're going to revert to, what they know already. I mean, so many people are stuck already to their smartphones and tablets or TV or their desktop or whatever it is, they're stuck on a screen and it's only going to get closer and closer to your face, meaning a virtual headset where you're going to be plugged in most of the day just to escape this reality of being a human. And so I just kind of foresee that inevitably happening.
Well, let
And
me jump in there because again, that is the DNA being used at very low capacity at 10%. So again, currently humanity is, working in an inverted state with DNA where they're creating a matrix of recycled information, and everything you just talked about is the same thing. Now, do we have to stay in this holographic reality of the third dimension? No. It we can consciously shift. It's just that we need to start getting in the driver's seat of these physical bodies and use them the way they were meant to be used. And so it doesn't matter how far you go in the quantum field or in your environment. If you're observing and identifying, you're most likely observing and identifying from what you've already been programmed in, right? It's like humans have never had expanded fields and held them long enough to know the truth of what they are in their most authentic inner expression. And that's where new form is created. And so everything that you're talking about currently, because again, we are reflecting what our programming is. Our physical bodies are like a radio channel. And so whatever's been stored through the DNA's filing system, sending all the information through the body, your body is a magnetic to that same information. It's just this big recycling program of a matrix, right? And it's all through identity and observation through the ego, the mind, and the intellect. And that's what we're not. And so right now, these are the things that we're currently seeing that could have potential, but I don't think that is our future. I don't think that is our potential. We are moving into a time where DNA is a big conversation, and I'm not talking about it on a medical scientific. I'm talking about, what the software system is in frequency, in how it moves the magnetics of what's been programmed in the body. And so again, going back to that radio channel of receiver transmitter, we're way more involved than, what we truly know. And so when we can start, really learning that this body is constantly communicating with us, the body through our emotions, through the chemical sensations, through the disease or the form, all of those states are telling us what we are not. Because again, in the most expanded of this vehicle, it already knows everything about you. Within that DNA filing system is the purest, file of you, where there's way more information than you could ever know to go in and co-create all new form and to hold expanded states in this body where we don't have to be playing in this third holographic reality. There is ways to exit the matrix algorithm of the third dimensional body, which then takes you, right out of creating in this repetitive way that we're currently seeing humanity work, right? So there's so much expansion for each and every one of us. And yes, we are getting attuned to everything around us, but when one truly wants to honor and know what the human species is, because we are this again is we are so advanced as to what we are when you start working in the frequency in the electrical system of this physical body, you have access to everything that is pure. It's within each and every one of us is an all-knowing state. Again, we've been in these reincarnation processes for a long time, but again, it's the key to all that is we need to start unlocking what DNA truly is. We don't need to be in all these recycling situations where we're playing out the same belief systems and we're co-creating, these same discordant timelines with humanity. It's nothing is shifting, no matter how much you want to evolve in AI and all that technology, it's still not going to be the truth of what we truly are. We are the technology. Again, there's so much that we can do with this body if we started moving into a higher percentage as a collective of knowing how to use our software system. There can be so much more to experience than what we're currently experiencing. So I'll just kind of leave it at that and then see where you can.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. And I know that that's probably me tapping into my own programming of what, the dismal future of humans and all this other stuff with AI and Optimus in your house cleaning it, and you don't no longer need a maid, et cetera, whatever. And I do understand that we can have a different future when we are opening ourselves up to understanding that we are the technology. And that, when you first said that to me many months ago, I was like, I am the technology? You mean I am creating all of this? Why would I create this? Like, that makes no sense. Like, if I were the creator, I'd be living in a luxurious house. Like I'd have a completely easy lifestyle, right? Like super wealthy, etc. So, um, yeah, I think that
And I
for
think
us,
I
yeah.
think that's beautiful what you just said because again, we all have this entitlement through identity of what we think we are. And, but we also have this expansion of what we feel what we could be. Right. And so again, that's the beauty of it is we are working in a matrix system, but this matrix system through our programming is a stairway of consciousness to exit it. Right. And so that's the unfolding and the awakening of the human is, as a collective, in my perspective, we chose this particular algorithm of limited beliefs, emotions, and chemicals of the way the body, is aging so rapidly in the reincarnation process. But it's like, when does enough become enough? When is all this looping and having the same outcome and experience enough? Well, that's part of the awakening process of there is something so much more in how I can co-create within this reality. So, essentially what you said is that is the awakening, is knowing and understanding that these looping cycles, these chemical feelings, these places where we get stuck is part of the algorithm to catapult us to start feeling our way into how we truly want to feel and co-create. And there's so much more to be said there.
When you say to feel into it, is that one way that we are like tuning into our higher potential? Like, can you give the listeners some advice of how we can just start the process of maybe not being limited to 10%? Maybe we could just get 1% better every year. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, 1% every year. Yeah, so again, the key to starting neurofeedback, right? Self-regulating, self-checking, right, is really through which is genius within our species, is our emotions. Number one is anytime we're having some sort of emotion, we're going outside of ourselves. We're using the ego, the mind, the intellect. And so anytime we're in some type of emotional state or we're creating identity of what we think we are and it's creating some sort of discordance, or even if the body is on automatic pilot to create anxiety or these chemical sensations, again, still that's us going outside of ourselves as if these things are ours. And it's not, within the body, it already knows what it is. Like you can guarantee that this body already knows what it is to be whole. It is genius what is in your software system. It's just waiting and it's dormant and it wants to be awakened. But, how do we start getting a sense of, this authentic vibrational state that the human is? Well, we got to self-regulate. It's going inward and allowing ourselves to feel, right? Because the human, all the vibrations, the feelings, the chemicals, and so forth, that's all information. It's all information that the body is speaking from. And so just attuning, like a lot of people don't want to take the time to go into their feelings or trace, what is the real root cause of this? Instead, we like to identify and blame. Instead, we want to go on Google and look up every type of symptom and make it our own, right? Which then we're programming ourselves. Oh, okay. But for us to start getting within our physical bodies, step one is assessing, what are you agreeing to? What is truly you? And it's not from a place of the ego, the identification, and the observation. It's from a place of where your body feels sound. Your body already has innate intelligence of, again, what it is, what it wants to feel in a home resonance. Well, what does that mean? Even if it's just a real neutral field where you're not in all this chemical uproar, the best way to describe it is when your body has that feeling of neutrality or when you're in flow state, that's a really creative space to be in. And the body is not going into programming from there. It's not going into subconscious behavior. You're giving yourself a moment to allow a natural frequency and to be in it. And so the practice of, first stages of really connecting with yourself where you can get that 1%, right? Is again, it's knowing when you're in chemical state or emotions. Your emotions produce chemicals, whether it's cortisol or serotonin or, whatever the chemical is. I don't care what the chemical is. If you're in an emotional chemical state, that what that means is you're going outside of yourself from your mind and your ego. And that frequency is telling you, your body is telling you, hey, this is absolutely not who you are. You're going outside of yourself. You're creating some kind of separation frequency from who you truly are, and you're identifying in it as if it's yours. Right? So again, our emotions in the chemical state they produce is genius because the body again is trying to self-regulate us. It's almost it is our neurofeedback to get back in our lane. Well, what is the true vibratory resonance of a very healthy whole individual? Well, if you've ever been in the purest state, or I know many of you have had glimpses of that neutrality or peaceful resonant frequency. Again, it's of a flow state, it's of a creation state. It's very pure and it's subtle. And it's that is the natural frequency to moving in expanded states. So a first frequency, which I would call 0 point, is getting your body to a very neutral, peaceful, grounded state. But again, most humans don't want to hold that frequency. They don't want to hold it long enough where your body can start self-regulating. Again, it's, even just holding a 0 point can very much heal a lot of issues within the body by taking down inflammation and helping the physiology balance. But what happens with us is the human species is really addicted to suffering. They're really addicted to being in their mind and the ego and the intellect, of wanting to over-identify and everything, of sending so many messages and signals to the DNA to constantly be coding, 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 coding. And when we're doing that, we're telling our cells to divide, mutate, divide, mutate, divide, mutate. And so, the way that we're using these bodies is not our fault, because none of us have been trained how to use DNA. But again, we're sending so many messages that are coding, that are sending different frequencies into the body. And our body's brilliant. The cells are going to do everything we command and say. And so, but if you think about how we're always, again, bringing in so much information that's not ours, and especially if you're a really chemically driven person, right? This body is just, the cells are like, okay, I'll take the instruction. I don't really want to be that frequency, but here we go, just mutating, sending instruction to all these areas. Eventually, depending on what we're hardcore looping in discordant frequencies, well, there's a match to that in the organs in frequency. Again, the organs, like, for example, the lungs, they're grief, heart grief, kidneys fear, liver anger, and so forth. But those are all hertz and frequencies. They have match. And so when we're outside of ourselves and our egos saying, oh, I'm not loved, I'm not heard, I'm not seen, okay, it's coding in the software system, sending that frequency and signal, the hertz. It's going to the match in the organ. Let's just say you're having so much fear that you feel so unloved and anxiety. So it's hitting the kidneys, right? It's depleting the kidney energy body and so forth. And so going deeper into all of this to really start to understand that on a very beginner's level, that your emotions are a clue to what you are absolutely not. And when you're in that emotional state, if you can start realizing that you just went outside of yourself and agreed to something that's so subconscious already in you, and you can take the time to add some dedicated focus into going, okay, well, I caught that frequency. I know I'm absolutely not this emotion. I'm going to go ahead and start holding a very neutral frequency. As soon as you feel that chemical emotion, you realize that's not who you are. Your body's smart. It's already whole. It wants you to get back home and hold a unified field of a 0 point. And as soon as you hold that frequency, you're already creating neurofeedback to start shifting these patterns where the neural pathways got locked into survival and safety. So I know that's very long-winded, but again, people who are listening to this, you can play it out over and over again. But there's so much that we can do, and it first really takes, being accountable to yourself of what are you agreeing to, through the mind and ego, where you're creating all this identity or, that's making you feel less than, that's creating all these limited beliefs, or maybe you're constantly depressed and it's very subconscious. But it doesn't matter what it is, because again, you are in a physical body that is so highly intelligent that if you learn to use it and start holding higher unified fields of this more neutral state of what you truly are, you can start disconnecting from that old programming, those old stories, whatever's been attuned, encoded in the three generations, and so on and so on.
So, for those of you who have never heard of getting to 0 point or that state of neutrality, um, for me personally, like it's like a blank space, and my mind is constantly going. Like, I have thoughts from the moment I wake to the moment I sleep, and for those of us with active minds, it's like to the point of just being still and like having a blank space. That's how I describe it. It could feel different to other people. Can you give a few examples, Shannon, of like your students and how they described getting into their 0 point so other listeners can relate?
Yeah, so 0 point, let's just talk about what 0 point is. So 0 point is a tool where you can start using DNA the correct way. Well, why is that? Because instead of you going outside of yourself, looking for this old recycled frequency in the matrix that's causing havoc, as soon as you initiate a 0 point frequency within the body, using your body as the frequency being you are, you're using the body correctly. The 0 point holds an intelligence within you that it's self-regulating. And so, what does it feel like when you're going into the body and you're holding that field? When you're first starting to play in it, well, where does it begin? Well, you can close your eyes and you can just allow yourself to really just play in a fluid field of the body where maybe you're in meditation, maybe you're creating some kind of flow state field within the body. But it's something that you gently want to start practicing in. For a lot of people, they haven't been able to ever go in their body. They've never felt frequency, in their lives. So, ways that I do it is if you want to get into a 0 point frequency, you can use the third eye entry and bring the frequency into the DNA itself. So what you would do is you would close your eyes, you would allow just a very pure field to come on in. And then you just play with that field, just going up and down the body. So bringing it into the DNA, or the pineal gland, allowing yourself to feel what it feels like to with direct intent, holding that frequency within the pineal. And then again, still being in a nice meditative, relaxed state, just bring that unified field down through the body and feel what it feels like to connect with frequency. Again, it's not easy. It's not easy when you're a beginner and you've never gone into this masterpiece of your quantum system that has all this information. And so with 0 point, you're first initiating a frequency that's very neutral and you're holding it as a unified field in the body. And you don't have to make it complex. It's just something that you want to play with. And everyone has a co-creative state of how they want to understand their body vibrationally. So that would be, one of the first tests to just go in, see if you can just bring in a neutral, very grounded field within the physical body and just see how the body reacts to that. I know for some people, again, that when they're first initiating that, it may be difficult. I remember when I was first doing meditation when I was young, and I would, just kind of sit and, quiet my mind. And as I was moving frequency, there was all this screaming. It was scary to be inside my body, and it took a long time. Like, I'm like, I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go in and meditate within this physical body that, is pretty scary in there. But again, there's different tools, and the tools that I teach, that is a big part of my brand and what I'm bringing forward in different lecture series. So from there, I'll just kind of leave it at that with 0 point.
Yes, I love that. And if you would like more information on joining her upcoming classes and group sessions and or booking a private session with her, you can find it at shannonpardini.com. All the links will be down below. As we come to an end of this podcast, I just want to sort of like reiterate like your work in the world and just to thank you for just sharing it with us because I know some spiritual teachers and I know a lot of spiritual teachers, they're like undercover teachers. Like if I didn't know they did what they did, it's like they're not putting themselves on YouTube or, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. They're not putting themselves out into the world and it's like, well, I just want to thank you for sharing this. I mean, it's if you're a first time listener, I encourage you to listen to this again. And every time you do listen to something that Shannon shares, it's like, I understand now. You know, the first couple times I didn't really get that part or that section of it. So more and more is revealed to you. And just to get to know you a little bit better and what you didn't share earlier is that you are super kind and just such a wonderful person. So if you want to work with somebody that has, you know, that light, like I always say before I work with anybody, I want them to be from, the higher realm, the light source, angels, like, the highest realm possible. And yeah, Shannon is it. So I don't want you to be fearful of working with her. That I just want to encourage you that it is probably, this is not medical advice or anything like that, but it is probably another way for you to enlighten and evolve as a human species.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many ways to go in and attune and to really clean up DNA, and it's very logical. And I know that a lot of this stuff sounds abstract, but it's not. It's just I'm talking from a level of intelligence of mastery within the physical body and what it's capable of. So again, I appreciate you, Diana, for holding the space. I know it's not always easy with where I'm always speaking from and guided to share. But again, yeah, no, I just appreciate you and the community. And this is just a starting point for me to come out and, share on everything that we spoke about today. There is such, deeper foundation to each piece intricately. And so hopefully, I can get more motivated to put more content out, just little short form videos. So again, we appreciate you. And yeah, I just look forward to sharing more as we move along here in 2025.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.